Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I refinish furniture full time, but right now it's the off season, so I decided to launch a YouTube channel. So let's get into it. I found this dresser on Marketplace, and we're going to see what it looks like at the end. So right now I'm taking the old drawers out, and I'm going to take the old hardware off. So I just take all the hardware off and put it in a bucket, and now I'm going to wrap these drawers, and I'm going to speed this video up for the sake of time. I'm just going to show you, basically a simple way to do this. I just put paper around the edge and tape it off, and that's it. So just lay your paper out, put the drawer on top of it, stretch it out, cut it, and tape around the edge. That's all I do every single time. And I'm going to apologize for all of the autocorrect. I tried to cut out as much as I could, but I really didn't realize the camera was doing that. But later on I decided not to use this camera that I bought and just use my phone, which turned out a lot better. And here I'm showing the angle where I like to reuse the original holes on the drawers. So since I'm reusing those, I tape them off with blue tape so I don't get any spray inside the drawer. And here I have a drawer that has come apart, so I'm just going to glue that together real quick. Just going to put some glue down inside the dovetails and put that back part on. It's pretty common for me to find something that needs repaired whenever I get a dresser. So we're just going to fit that back on and clamp it up. These clamps are not super fancy. These are, I believe, from Harbor Freight, but they do the job. So now it's time to sand the drawers, and I'm starting with 120 so I can get the previous hardware marks off the top of the drawers. So basically I'm going to start with 120 grit, and I'm going to sand these real good, and then I'm going to switch to 220 grit. That's going to make them feel a lot smoother to the touch. And this is just another angle. You can see the old hardware marks are usually in all of these drawers. Pretty much every dresser I get has old hardware marks. And just like that, it's 4 months later. I got super busy out of nowhere and had to put this project to the side. So this dresser's been sitting in my shop for about 4 months, and you're gonna see later on that I mess up some parts on here, and I don't know if it's in the video or not. I may have edited all of that out, but at some point I get back to working on these tops and I forget that they are solid wood. They are not a veneer with trim on the edge, and that actually cost me several hours of work to fix, but we'll see that at some point. Right now I have my spray booth set up, and I'm setting all of these drawers in there that are wrapped up. So I've got 3 guns. I have one for primer, one for paint, and one for lacquer. That just makes cleaning a lot easier instead of using one gun for everything. So I sprayed off with the air gun, get some dust off, and now I'm spraying the first coat of primer. And this is just another angle. And I'm doing this in real time. This is not sped up. You can adjust your spray gun to whatever setting you like. I keep mine pretty wide open, so I have to move fairly quick. I'm just speeding this up a little bit. I'm going at the same pace I was previously. I'm just saving time on this video. But just giving a single coat of primer on these drawers. And one coat is really all you need with the primer that I'm using here. It's the Zinsser shellac-based primer. And it's an excellent primer. I only need one coat on any project. And I don't have to worry about bleed through. So we're going to let that dry for a little bit, and I'm going to focus on the sanding on here. I like to sand the edges first, get this trim sanded first. A lot of times your sandpaper will ride up onto the tops and put scratches on the tops. So you don't want to do the tops and then do the trim, because then you got to do the tops again. So we do the trim first, and then we will move to the tops. One thing you want to do is sand with the grain. You never want to go against the grain, which is exactly what I did on these ends, and I will show you what I mean. So here is an issue. Since this has been 4 months since I worked on this, I forgot this was solid wood. I thought that was a piece of trim on the edge. So I sanded against the grain and I put these scratches in there. So now I got to redo these 2 edges. You never want to go against the grain. And I think I had the TV on also, so I was not really paying attention to this as much as I should have. So one way you can tell this is real wood and not a piece of veneer with trim is you see how the wood grain on the top continues into the trim the same way. That's how you know it's a solid wood piece, and they probably ran a router around the edge. So now I'm speeding this part up because I now have to sand with the grain, and this takes a little bit longer because I have to be more tedious with it. I can't just sand it side to side like I did earlier. So I'm running this with, I think I have 100 grit, I think I have 120 grit to try to hog off material. And then at the end I hit it with some 220 to soften it up. And now those scratches are pretty much gone. This looks like a pretty good piece of trim now. Now I don't have to worry about the front of the dresser because I did sand with the grain. So that one I just hit with 220. Now the sanding. Yay. I know a lot of people think sanding is boring, and it is. So I'm actually going to speed this up. Once again, I'm hitting this top with 120 first. I think I used like 4 sheets of 120. And once I get it down to where I like it, then I will hit it with 220. And that's all I use. I just use 120 and 220. I know some refinishers will start with 120 and work their way up, 150, 180. I don't do that. You can if you want to. I just do 120, 220. That's it. Now I've got this ring, and after I got it home, I looked at it, and that's probably why the lady sold it to me in the first place. I think she stripped it, saw that stain, and bailed out. So now I got to figure out what to do with it. And this top is maple. I'm pretty happy about that because maple has a very unpredictable wood grain. There's so many types of maple out there, and they all just have a really chaotic wood grain. And I got lucky because since this is solid wood, I can probably sand a really long time before I finally get to the bottom of it. So that's what I ultimately decided to do. I don't have bleach or anything like that. I'm just going to sand this out. And normally you don't want to sand this much in one spot, especially if it's veneer, or you'll go through the veneer by now. I'm only doing this because it's solid wood. And also another problem is if you sand this much in one spot, you're going to create a valley. So now I'm sanding in a much wider pattern to knock the hills down to even this out again. And there it is. So now that that spot's gone, and I'm pretty much done with all the heavy sanding, I'm just hitting this with 220 now to close up the wood grain, make it feel a lot smoother to the touch, and this is pretty much the last sand before staining. And what I've noticed sometimes is if I use a piece of sandpaper too long, there will get something stuck under it, and then you'll sand that into your top. So usually on my last pass, I will get a brand new sheet of 220 and go over it real fast. So now I'm wiping this off with a clean wiping cloth. And I see another spot here, but I'm going with a darker stain, so I think that will blend in. I love maple. With oak and pine, you kind of see the same patterns, but with maple, there's just unpredictable patterns. So I'm going to start off with a conditioner. I always use Varathane products. I use their oil-based stains, and I use their conditioners to go with it. And I always use a conditioner because I have no idea how old these pieces are. I have no idea if they've been kept in a basement or if they've been sitting somewhere where the environment is not good for them. So usually there's dry spots in a dresser top. So this conditioner basically fills in the dry spot and it makes the stain go on evenly throughout the entire piece, and it's less blotchy, and it looks more uniform. So we're just putting on a healthy serving of that, and then I'm going to wipe off the excess with a wiping cloth. And I get my wiping cloths from Home Depot. I do not get the super fuzzy cotton kind. Those are just a problem. They stick too much to a dresser, that has stain on it or has this conditioner on it. So the rags that I'm using are a poly cotton or something like that, and it's basically just like the old thin t-shirt material, and they work a lot better. So if you're looking for rags, these are technically wiping cloths, and I just get the big pack from Home Depot. And now that I have this conditioner on here, I'm tempted to stop here just because I like the way it looks now. But I can't stop here. I have to put a stain on because that spot I sanded extra hard is a little bit lighter, and it's because I sanded through the residual stain that was on there from previously. So that spot's a little bit lighter than the rest of the piece. I have put conditioner on and then a stain called Natural, and then I just sprayed top coat on top of that, and it looked great. And now this looks 3D. I had to get a shot of this. Yeah, I love maple just because of their wood grain. It's so unpredictable and chaotic, and it's a real attention grabber. And there's some streaks towards the end here, and they continue down into the wood grain of the trim. So I believe that was just natural. I don't think I did that in the 4 months that this dresser sat in the shop. So now it's been about an hour, I think, and the conditioner is dried, and now it's time for stain. And I'm not speeding this up. I'm showing you real time how to apply this stain. This is an oil-based stain, so you have more working time versus a water-based stain. In my view, those water-based stains, you have to go quick. And with an oil base like this, you have a few extra minutes to get this on evenly and wipe it off. And I don't use a brush, I use a rag, and that's it. I just wad it up into a ball basically and spread this on. I do the tops first and then I do the trim because the end grain will soak up more stain than the face grain. So if you do the trim first, or if you do it at the same time as the tops, a lot of times your edges will look darker than the tops. And if that's what you're going for, that's cool. But I like it to look uniform, so I do the tops first and then I hit the edges. So now I'm going to start wiping off right away. You can leave this on for a minute or two and then wipe to let it soak in a little bit more. I personally don't like to do that. I've noticed that the longer I leave stain on, it starts to dry out and get tacky, and then it's a little more streaky and it's harder to get off, and then it doesn't look as good. So I like to wipe off while it's still pretty wet, and then if I want another coat later, I will apply another one later. And so basically, I have not turned this rag over yet. I'm still using the same dirty side of the rag. And basically, I'm just kind of massaging this into the wood, going with the wood grain, and I will use another rag to take off the excess. clean rag. Now this rag is to get off every little bit. And always go with the wood grain, so if you do start to get streaks, they'll blend in with the wood grain and no one will notice. But with an oil-based stain like this, you pretty much have at least 5 minutes to get this off before you start running into problems. So if you see I'm curling my hand over the edge because you want the stain to go in the direction of the grain on the edge also. I'm sure I'll do another piece where there's trim, where the trim is the opposite direction of the tops, and I'll show you how to do that. But for this piece, this was a solid wood piece, so all the trim goes in the same direction as the tops. That's why I'm wiping this way. So now this is going to be the final pass, so I'm going to strike off. So I take my rag and I wrap it around my fingers, and I'm just going to do one final pass straight across the entire top. Make sure you go perfectly straight across. Don't do any rainbows. Perfectly straight across is what you want. And now we'll leave that for, I believe, 2 hours. The can says you can restain in 1 hour, but I don't stick with that. I go with at least 2 or 3 hours before I recoat. And it's starting off pretty well, but it's not as dark as I was hoping, so I'm going to put another coat on later. So while that's drying, I'm going to get back to these drawers, and I'm just running some 220 over these drawers, smooth them out a little bit. So now I'm using the paint. I always use Behr paint from Home Depot. And I'm going for quick, thin coats. Again, I keep my guns pretty wide open, so I move fairly quick. And this is not sped up, this is real time. So that's how quickly I'm going. You don't want to go a real heavy layer first off. You really want to just build layers and just do, thin coats. For me, 2 thin coats pretty much gets the coverage I need. So I'm just speeding this part up again. There's a lot of videos out there on painting, so I don't want to focus too hard on that. I pretty much just spray the paint on. I hold my gun about 12 inches, maybe 12 to 18 from the tops of the drawers and from the dressers, so I'm going to let that dry. Now it's the next day, I believe. Getting the day going. So now this is the second coat of paint, and as you can see, it's much easier to tell a difference in color. The color's not a whole lot different. The primer is a true white, and the color that I'm putting on here is light beige. Alright, so that's drying. Now I've moved on to staining these tops again. Remember, it's the next day, so this is dried overnight, so we're good to go. But really, if you give it a couple hours, you could restain this in the same day. And the stain that I'm using is called Shaded Slate, and I only use the Varathane oil-based stains. So Varathane conditioner and Varathane oil-based stain is what I use. So the color on this, I believe, is Shaded Slate, and it works out really well on oak, but I don't think I've ever used it on pine, and I'm not sure if I've used it on maple either, so I'm kind of giving it a go on this. So I'm just applying the stain, putting it in the direction of the wood grain, and making sure it's even all over the top. So again, I'm using the dirty rag technique where I'm wiping, but I'm only wiping with one side at the time. So I'm kind of massaging it into the wood. At the same time, I'm taking off a little bit of excess, but a lot of it is still on that side of the rag. So I'm kind of just moving it around, leaving a little bit behind so the wood can soak it up a little bit before I use a clean rag to take off whatever's left on top. And there we go. So I'm going to take off the last remaining bit on here, and I've noticed that this stain will tend to darken over time. So as it dries, it tends to darken. So I feel pretty confident that after this coat it's going to give me the color that I'm looking for. Alright, so now I'm going to take the rag, wrap it around my fingers, and now I'm going to strike off. I don't even know if it's necessary at this point because I don't know if you can see from the camera, but when I'm looking at this piece, I'm not really seeing a lot of excess stain sitting on the top. I pretty much wiped it all off already, but I just do this just in case. And we're done. Now we got to get back to the drawers. And I'm using lacquer. I'm not using polyurethane. I've tried poly in the past, and I don't know. I don't feel confident with it. So I switched to lacquer, and it works really well. It smells horrible, so I understand why a lot of people don't want to deal with it. But It's not very hard to mix, and I think it goes on really well with a natural top on a dresser. Polyurethane kind of gives it a plasticky look, and lacquer gives wood a more natural look. So I think it just looks better with a stain top. And it's not too bad to mix up. I had video of me mixing it, but it didn't make it into editing. This video could have been 2 hours long, so I had to condense it down a little bit, but at some point I'll show you how to mix the lacquer. It's pretty easy. So now it's the next day, and I'm going to work on the dresser now. So the first thing we've got to do is cover this top with paper and get it into the spray booth. So I just have regular brown paper, and I'm going to cut off 2 pieces. So what you don't want to do is stick that blue tape right onto your fresh stain. So you really want to tuck the paper down in there and put tape on the paper and not so much on your trim or your tops. And unfortunately I cut this piece a little too short, so I'm going to have to do exactly what I said not to do. But I feel pretty good about it because I'm going to take that tape off in the same day. If I were to leave that on for a few days, I think we'd have real problems. That blue tape tends to leave residue behind after a little while. So if you're taking the tape off, a week later, I would not do that. I'm only doing it because this tape's coming off later. So now I'm sanding these edges with 220 just to smooth them out a little bit. I mean, I don't know how many times I've bumped into this in the last 4 months, so it probably needs a little bit of TLC. So I'm getting all the drawers out. These are done. Now we're taking the dresser into the spray booth. And I'm going to show you how dusty this is. This collected dust for 4 months, and yeah. I'm wearing a mask also. I don't think I would have survived without one. This is rough. Alright, time for primer. I'm going to refill my spray gun real quick. Now we're ready to go. And this is the real-time speed that I'm going, just to kind of show you how I have my gun set up. I've got a medium-sized fan on it, and I'm going about this speed. The primer is actually very thin, so I can't sit too long in one spot. I have to move quick or I'll have runs. Same thing with the other side, so I have my gun fairly wide open, so I have to move quick. And since this is a shellac-based primer, it's a primer and a sealer. So I really don't have to worry about bleed-through, and one coat is all I need. So I just kind of go with a medium-sized coat. I go down and then I go back up. And this is why I used an air gun to spray it out before I even got started on the priming, because if I did not blow all that dust out, it would be coming out right now. And I've done that a few times. It's not fun. I don't paper off the inside of the dresser because no one's really going to see it anyway. And since I've turned this into a business, I've really looked for ways to make it more efficient. So to save time, I don't cover the inside of the dresser. And you'll see here in a minute, there's still some dust flying out of there, but it's not nearly as bad as it could have been. Time to close it up, let it dry. So now we're getting back to these drawers, and I'm hitting these very lightly with 400 grit, and that's basically just going to smooth out that lacquer a little bit. And I'm not going to show every single drawer, but I'm pretty much unwrapping these, taking the tape off, and now I'm applying the new hardware. And since I reuse the old holes, I don't have to do any drilling. I can measure the holes when I first get the piece, then I go on Amazon and I order hardware with that same size, and then I can just pop those in, and that saves time. So now I'm speeding this up a little bit, but basically I am going to give 2 coats of paint on the dresser just like I did the drawers, and I'm going at pretty much the same pace. Again, I really wanted to focus on the staining aspect of furniture refinishing, so I don't really want to focus too hard on painting. I'm just showing you how I do it, and I'm sure there's tons of other ways to do it, but this is how I do it. And you can see how foggy it gets in that spray booth, so I highly recommend a mask, and I use goggles for eye protection. Okay, so now I have sprayed 2 coats of paint, and now it's time to take this paper off, and this is where I kind of get a sneak peek at how this is going to look. And it looks good. It's going to look extra good when it's got a sheen on the top, and I use a satin sheen with my lacquer. So now I'm going to hit this top first, and then I'm going to hit these sides. And again, lacquer is very thin, so you got to move quick. And it smells horrible, so I understand why a lot of people don't want to use it. I have a shop. It's detached from my house, so it does smell pretty bad. I won't lie. I've even got ventilation in the tent, and it still leaks out. So a lot of times I'll spray, and then I just got to leave for a few hours. So now I'm giving, I usually do 3 coats of lacquer on the top, just because it's a high traffic area. I don't think you need to do 3 coats on the entire piece, unless you really want to. So now we're done. Now we're just going to let that dry, and we'll get back to it later. Now it's time to take it out of the spray booth and get the drawers back in it. So now I'm going to hit this with 400 grit, and I'm doing it very lightly. I'm basically just using the weight of the sanding pad to sand that. So you're not really sanding, you're just knocking off any bumps. And now we're going to put these drawers in, and I think it looks good with that hardware. I'm going to wheel it over to my fake wall for staging. And here it is. So that's it. Thanks for watching.